Welcome to Kentucky. The date is the 9th of July in the year 1993. 3 days ago, the military set up a perimeter around the towns of Muldra, Riverside, West Point and Rosewood, dubbed the Knox Exclusion Zone. Join us as we follow the tales of the last survivors in these towns, and more importantly, can they extract to safety and escape the death and carnage that has befallen these communities. Even before Officer Titus Drake could clock in on the morning of the 9th, he found himself surrounded by what seemed to be a horde of the undead. Panicked, he fled West Point PD towards home, but there were zomboids everywhere. How did he not notice on his way in? Where did he park his car? Had everyone turned since arriving at work, or was he too asleep to notice? All that mattered was getting home safe. It occurred to the police officer that finding a weapon was likely to be a good idea, but these damn things would not leave him alone. He approached his place of residence and braced himself. Further down the highway in the sleepy town of Muldra, trucker Sloan Driver had spent the night drinking at Sunstar Motel. Fortunately for him, this morning he woke to find that he was not in his bed, or anywhere near Sunstar, but worse still, the dead had come for him. Was he even in the exclusion zone? There sure were a lot of zomboids with military outfits on. He needed to find a way out. A car with the keys in the ignition. It is his lucky day, but there's no gas. Time to scavenge before the trailer park becomes overrun. This car looks like it might have some gas, but wait! He seems to have attracted the attention of a rather large horde. Meanwhile, back in West Point, Titus had found two strangers on his porch. Oh no, his front door is locked. Was that Bob inside? There's too many of them. Quick, run. His muscles began to slow as he became dehydrated. The noises of the undead became louder. Carrie Simmons had hoped to avoid trouble today by calling in sick. She worked at the local Spiffos restaurant, but after hearing the local news report, had decided to stay home. She answered the knocking door, and it seems trouble had found her instead. It seemed to Carrie that her entire neighbourhood had come to her house. Why were they following her? She frantically searched for a knife in the kitchen. They were on her, and she managed to get out just in time, and then lock them in the house. She stomped on one head, then proceeded to run around her house and think of what to do next. She forgot that the back door was locked and had to climb in through the window to get back in, but this gave her time to search the kitchen. She was feeling rather pleased with herself. After finding a knife, the zombies were quickly on her and she was chased out of her house for a second time. This time, however, she would defend her home and put them down. And with the last of her neighbour's brains splattered across the walls, she decided to make a plan on what she should do next. She thought it would be a good idea to go check the neighbour's house and see what supplies she could scavenge. She might be staying here for some time. Donning a pair of gloves and a scarf, she headed to the neighbour's house, dreading what she would find. Officer Drake managed to escape the house just in time, but his heart dropped when he saw the state of the streets. He decided his best course of action was to head out of town, but wondered if he could make it that far. The recently deceased littered the streets of West Point. Was he the last one alive? He climbed a fence in the hope of losing the zombies, and managed to end up in a little thicket and a lonely house. He hoped he was safe here. And with his only weapon broken, it was time to move again. As he ran past a recently burned down house, he spotted something that might provide something useful. Not the axe he was looking for, but these boots and disinfectant will come in handy. This cul-de-sac looks a bit quieter. He tries to clear the house and make a room to rest. As Drake gathered some food and supplies, he noticed an all too familiar sound. It was time to move again. As night drew in and he made his way past the cemetery, he noticed a location that might provide him with some weapons. A saw wasn't exactly what he was hoping for. He could feel the dead closing in. Maybe he would have better luck in this house. He noticed some boards on the windows of this house. Maybe this was a good spot to stay. Jackpot. With nowhere to run to, Sloan Driver decides to stay and fight rather than flee. As Sloane was making his way through the horde, the unthinkable happened. Meanwhile, in Riverside, Carrie wasn't venturing far from her home and decided to loot her neighbour's house instead. Once she'd put down John and Sheila, she proceeded to loot their kitchen of all their food. What's this? These books would likely come in handy soon, as well as this gun, although she would have to learn how to use it. She returned home to drop off her loot, and hopefully she wouldn't forget to clean up these corpses. They could be a problem down the road if she forgot. Titus Drake awoke on the second day of the apocalypse with a newfound confidence. Yesterday, he'd found an axe and a baseball bat, so now he would proceed to try and clear the area around his house of all the zombies. Once Drake was satisfied with the carnage that he had wrought, he went scavenging and couldn't believe what he found. Okay, so it was only an M36, but at least he had some ammo. And then more luck, he found a key in one of the bookshelves. He also found a cache of maps that would help him plan where to go next. Another horde. No problem for our surviving police officer. As Drake was living out some morbid zombie-slaying fantasy. In Muldra, Sloane Driver was desperately trying to avoid being bitten. He found some firefighter clothes, which were much thicker than his own, and boy was he glad he changed to something more protective. The zomboid had torn a hole in his sleeve, but he remained unharmed. Sloane switched to a new firefighter outfit and continued his journey. He spotted a nearby motel and thought to search the area for survivors or hopefully some fuel. What he found instead would change his plans drastically. With a gigantic horde approaching, it was time to escape the trailer park. He managed to find the edge of the suburbs and in his desperation broke into the first house he came across. The sounds of the undead were all around and he was exhausted, but knew he couldn't rest until he cleared all the houses in the neighbourhood. Finally, a quiet bed was found and Sloane Driver had successfully survived his first day. Carrie started the day watching some TV. The electric and the water was still on. That means things weren't bad beyond Riverside, right? All she had to do was hold out long enough for the military to come and secure the area. With this in mind, she proceeded to loot the surrounding houses of weapons and baking ingredients before finishing the day watching some more TV. Being a prison guard on any normal day was hard, but Mable Merchant had spent the last 24 hours trying to contain a violent situation along with her colleagues. It had finally become too much for the guards to handle and radioed the local police, but no answer, and so Mable was sent to Rosewood PD to call for backup. She was shocked at what she found there. She spotted something that would help her in securing the station. All she had to do was get to it. There was one final zomboid left in the station, one of the Rosewood PD staff, and little did Mable know, but even in death, that this person was to change her fortunes. Vote in my community tab to affect this story.